Emo music, as a genre, likes to flirt with tragedy. Somber themes, depressing lyrics, and world-weary despair are present in some of the greatest emo tracks. But sometimes, that tragedy becomes all too real. Sometimes, genuine trauma can take hold of a band and take its members to the very brink. This is what happened to Hawthorne Heights. Back in the mid-2000s, this was the emo band of the moment. Nothing could stop them, and they probably felt invincible. But the tragic, untimely death of a close friend and fellow bandmate changed all that. One horrifying incident in 2007 left them picking up the pieces, wondering what to do next, and questioning whether they could even carry on without their old friend, their brother. So how did they get through it? How did they move forwards as a band while honoring the memory of a dear friend? This is the story of Hawthorne Heights, and what happens when real tragedy rips into the very heart of emo. Before tragedy struck the band, Hawthorne Heights were busy with their mission, writing a soundtrack for a generation's heartache. It all began in Dayton, Ohio in 2001. If you've heard any of Hawthorne Heights music, there's a good chance you already knew these guys were from Ohio. Back in 2001, though, they weren't called Hawthorne Heights. They were called A Day in the Life, after the Beatles track of the same name. The guys got to work pretty quickly, with J.T. Woodruff on lead vocals, keys, and rhythm guitar, Micah Carley on lead, Matt Ridenauer on bass, and Aaron Bucciarelli on drums. The young band put together an impressive demo. 4 bullets for one girl. 4 bullets sold 500 copies. Good going for a band literally just starting out. It also caught the attention of Confined Records, who put out their debut album, 9 Reasons to Say Goodbye. Things were going great, but this particular puzzle had 2 pieces missing. First, the name. A Day in the Life just didn't suit their dark, melodic, screamo style. Then Matt Ridenauer solved the problem. He passed the Hawthorne Inn and Suites hotel on his commute each morning, and liked the name. This became Hawthorne Heights, a suitably gothic-sounding moniker for a band keen to embrace the darker side of emo. And the other missing piece? Well, that turned out to be Casey Calvert. The band needed a 5th member to perfect their dynamic and their sound. Casey was exactly that. But he was more than this. He slotted into the friend group perfectly, adding his own guitar work and trademark unclean vocals, and becoming a core member of the HH family. After joining Victory Records, the band were ready to record their debut album under their new name, and with their new member. This album would be a little record called The Silence in Black and White, and it was going to change everything. If you don't know about Victory Records, they're not particularly known for their emo artists, at least not back then. For a hardcore label like Victory, signing HH was a bit of a leap into the unknown, but it paid off, in a big way. Released in 2004, the album was the biggest-selling record Victory had ever put out up to that point, and singles like Nicky FM and Ohio Is for Lovers were all conquering mega hits. Even today, more than 2 decades on, the opening chord progression of Ohio Is for Lovers is soundtracking videos on TikTok, a real example of the band's lasting appeal. A new generation was getting into emo for the first time, and navigating the difficult transition from teenhood to adulthood. They needed a sound that captured what they were feeling, and Hawthorne Heights, with their blend of raw-throated catharsis and delicate melodic beauty, were exactly that. Tours with Alexis on Fire and Emery cemented their position on the post-hardcore scene, while a British tour with Bayside, Spitalfield, and Silverstein sent the band stratospheric on both sides of the Atlantic. Touring and superstardom are great, but they can quickly take their toll. Fortunately, the guys had each other to depend on. This was one of the factors that made them so irresistible to mid-2000s emo kids, the image of brotherhood and friendship they projected. Still, brotherhood and friendship aren't enough to keep the record labels happy. Hawthorne Heights needed to record something new for Victory. That something was If Only You Were Lonely, another smash hit that Victory must have been over the moon with. The album peaked at number 3 in the Billboard 200, while single Saying Sorry reached number 7 in the Modern Rock Tracks chart. But things were about to go sour with Victory. In the run-up of the release of If Only, Victory Record put out a statement. "Rock music needs your support," the statement read. "The number 1 slot belongs to us." Fair enough. The label wanted fans to buy their new band's record. Nothing wrong with that. But Victory went further. They advised fans of HH to go into record stores, grab CDs from the R&B star Neo, and basically hide them. In other words, sabotage the sales of a fellow musician. Not the classiest move from the veteran hardcore label. And Hawthorne Heights weren't happy. They were outraged that this had been done in their name, and to promote their record. They claimed Victory had released these statements without consulting the band. Later that year, unable to reach an agreement with a company the band believed were manipulating them for profit, HH said they would be leaving Victory and suing the label. Predictably, Victory weren't happy. They countersued for breach of contract and libel in September 2007. A legal nightmare was beginning. A legal nightmare, maybe, but not a musical one. Hawthorne Heights were on top of the world, with a solid group of friends and bandmates, and legions of adoring fans. It would take more than a legal wrangle with a record label to stop their rise. Whatever happened with Victory, JT, Matt, Casey, Micah, and Aaron knew everything was going to be just fine. Then, in November 2007, everything changed. The band had just begun their latest American tour in Detroit, Michigan, and were gearing up for their second show of the tour in Washington, D.C., when tragedy struck. Gathering the bandmates together for soundcheck, the members of Hawthorne Heights realized someone was missing. They found Casey Calvert in his bunk on the tour bus. He wasn't breathing. Despite frantic attempts to revive him, Casey didn't wake up. He had passed away at only 26 years old. Everyone close to Casey was devastated. Bandmates, friends, family members, and of course, thousands of fans. For years after the event, and still to this day, fans shared their memories of the rhythm guitarist. He was so effing cool, one post on Ultimate Guitar Forum read. Hawthorne Heights will never be the same without him. And this was true, but before they could begin facing up to life as a band without their old friend, Hawthorne Heights found themselves battling media speculation. The official cause of death was ruled as combined drug intoxication. Naturally, this sent the rumor mill into overdrive. Aaron Bucciarelli was quick to dispel any unpleasant theories into the nature of Casey's death. What the toxicology report doesn't show is that before our leaving for tour, Casey had a root canal, and he was prescribed Vicodin, an opiate, for the pain. Aaron's statement read, Casey was not involved in anything illegal, nor was he a substance abuser. So what would happen next? How could the band possibly continue? Only one thing was certain. They would not be replacing Casey. We won't add another guitar player or add another screamer, JT Woodruff said. In our albums, it'll always say Casey Calvert, guitar vocals. Bucciarelli agreed. We don't need another screamer, he said. If the fans want screaming, they can provide it themselves. In the wake of such a massive blow, Hawthorne Heights found solace the only way they knew how, through music. Before Casey passed away, they'd already written their follow-up to If Only You Were Lonely, but the ongoing problems with Victory Records made releasing the record impossible. A court ruling left the band free to record with other labels, but they still had to honor the rest of their contract with Victory, which meant recording 2 more albums with the label they were now locked in conflict with. Eventually, in August 2008, they released Fragile Future on Victory. Needless to say, the spirit of Casey lives on in this record. Tracks like Rescue Me and Four Become One chart the shock, confusion, and tragedy of Casey's passing. However, without Casey's trademark vocals, the band had to head in a new direction. There were no harsh vocals on this record, and the emo post-hardcore sound is replaced with a softer, indie rock sound. Still, fans loved it. Feeling raw themselves after the passing of their hero, fans were moved by the record's vulnerability and honesty. The record sold well and spent 5 weeks on the Billboard 200 chart. But one record wasn't going to heal the scars of Casey's passing just like that. And what about the trouble with Victory? Hawthorne Heights had weathered the storm to some extent, but they still had a hard road ahead of them. In 2010, Hawthorne Heights found the solution they needed. While they were still grieving the loss of their friend, at least they could put the trouble with Victory behind them. Victory put out Midwesterners in November that year, a greatest hits album that marked the end of the band's contract. Hawthorne Heights were finally free, but don't forget they'd received a court ruling saying they were free to record with whoever they wanted, so they were already several steps ahead of Victory. Signing with Wind Up Records, Hawthorne Heights released Skeletons that same year. After heading in a different musical direction with Fragile Future, HH were back to their emo roots. The record also included screamed vocals provided by guitarist Micah Carley. As a tribute to Casey, no permanent new screamer joined the band. Carley had been the band's original screamer back in the day, and Calvert was still credited on the liner notes. The record was a critical success. Hawthorne Heights were back. They were doing things on their own terms, and there was more to come. The band got to work in a big way. In 2011, they recorded the first in a trilogy of EPs, entitled Hate, following it up with the second, Hope, the following year. Less than a year later, they released Zero, the band's 5th full-length album. A concept record, Zero finds Hawthorne Heights at their most inventive, bringing universal themes to life within a central narrative thread. If you're a longtime fan of Hawthorne Heights, you know we've been through a lot over the years, the band said about the record. Zero deals with these life issues against a dystopian, war-ravaged backdrop. After self-releasing the concluding act of the EP trilogy, Hurt, in 2015, the band took a little break from recording. The band was going through some lineup changes at this point. Original drummer Aaron Bucciarelli departed the band on good terms, with Micah Carley following soon after. Longtime touring and session member Mark McMillan was unveiled as the band's new official guitarist, and Chris Popodak joined on drums. JT Woodruff and Matt Ridenour were now the only founding members of Hawthorne Heights, but they were still loving the band, even after so many years. The creative energy was still flowing through them. In 2017, they wrote a whole new record, Bad Frequencies, while on tour. We played 170 shows in 2017, wrote every moment that we could, then demoed, then recorded an album. Woodruff said, "I think we fit everything we possibly could in 365 days, and we're very proud of that." The video for lead single Push Me Away demonstrates how the band were feeling at that moment. In a world torn apart by negativity, we should be coming together in solidarity for each other, the title card tells us. Love is powerful. Love is real. Love is everything. Then HH launched into a wonderfully spiky golden age emo that sounds like Jimmy Eat World or Death Cab filtered through a metal-tinged prism. At a stroke, Hawthorne Heights showed us all that all the hard work had finally paid off. They'd become the fully fledged artists they'd always hinted they could be. And now anything was possible. Hawthorne Heights were on top of the world once again, and then the coronavirus pandemic put a stop to all that. But the guys had weathered storms in the past, and they were sure as hell going to weather this one too. As soon as they could get back on the road, they did so with old friends and fellow emo legends Bayside and Census Fail. And they hit the studio too. 2021's The Rain Just Follows Me is the band's 7th record, and showcases everything that's made this band such a resilient fixture on the emo scene. 20 years after they first got together, Hawthorne Heights have proved themselves capable of looking forward, without losing touch with their roots. The 15-year anniversary re-recording of If Only You Were Lonely is a great example of this, adding new twists to songs that were already fan favorites. Following this up with an EP of new songs, Lost Lights, also showed that they were not content simply to live in the past, resting on laurels from years ago. 2025 marks the 24th anniversary of Hawthorne Heights as a band, and the 18th anniversary of the passing of Casey Calvert. The fact that the band have been able to continue, and been able to keep on producing some of the most inventive and diverse emo music of the past 2 decades, is a testament to their strength. But it's a testament to Casey too, and the impression he left on his friends. By creating a string of incredible records, they're making sure Casey's legacy lives on. Perhaps this was a source of strength for them in those darkest moments. The idea of keeping their old friend's flame burning brightly for as long as possible. Thanks for joining me again on this one. It's been emotional, but hopefully it's been ultimately positive. Please like and subscribe and let me know what you'd like me to cover next. If you're in the mood for more explorations of all things emo and pop punk, check out the next video, coming right up.